Well, good morning again. It's so good to see all of you here. And we had a service already this morning with some in the parking lot, and we're recording this as well so that we have people that are joining us and will be watching online later today. And as we begin, I just want to say thank you for your attitude, your spirit over the last 3 months. I mean, it's been 3 months since we have been together in one place. Every time that I talk to one of you over the last 3 months, you would begin to tell me about the people that had been calling you, other members of our church, and how much it had meant to you. Or you would talk about how you had been making phone calls, and you've been checking in on other people, and you initially kind of did it for others, but you found it so uplifting to yourself. And it was encouraging to me to continue to hear of your love and grace throughout this time. And I want to thank you for your patience and prayers for our leadership as we had to make decisions and learn about how to make all of this happen in the ways that we have. And you've been persistent in your prayers. You've been patient with us as we learn and navigate, make adjustments through all of this. And it hasn't always been easy. We miss celebrating together. See John and Linda Whitaker over here. They celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary just, was it last week? Was that? And while it's good to be together, we have to admit that it's different. It's kind of awkward, isn't it? Being out in the foyer or outside, I kind of feel like I'm a middle school boy again, not really sure with what appropriate forms of touch really is. Like I want to be close to people, but just don't know what is right. Maybe you saw the video that Bryce and Allison, our youth and children's minister, produced about how we can greet one another and not do it quite in the same way anymore. And I think that it's hard because it's different. And I'm one that I like to be out front. I like to be one of the first faces that you see as you walk in the doors. I like to shake your hand and to give you a hug. And things are different. The word has continued to pop up in my life over the last 3 months. A word that I didn't use a whole lot before, but that word is essential. It first came into my world, perhaps like many of yours, whenever our government decided that because of the novelty of this virus that we needed to shut down businesses to kind of slow the spread. And there was this discussion about what businesses are essential and what businesses are not. Those businesses that were deemed essential, they could remain open to the public, and those that weren't, they had to close their doors for a season. And I know that there were some that they kind of took a little bit of pride in the fact that somebody saw them as being essential, as being necessary. Dusty. But for most of us, that left us with a lot of confusion. Why is this business essential and this one isn't? That concept of essential has come up a number of other times in the last 3 months. It came up when Allie and I a week ago decided, well, we actually decided a couple of weeks before, but last week we did something that we swore for the last 16 years we would never do, and we got our children a pet. We brought home a beagle puppy, and whenever we made that decision. It was largely based on the fact that we know that for our children, a lot of the events that they look forward to year-round, it has been canceled. It was deemed as non-essential, and at their age, they don't really understand what essential means. They don't have a concept of what is really taking place. And I know that some of you had vacation plans, and some of those vacations were changed. Maybe you changed them, or they were changed for you as the tour bus company or the resort. They were deemed as not essential, and so your plans were canceled. They were changed. When Allie started making preparations for this puppy, she went on to Amazon and started buying, adding a number of items into the cart. And she called me up one day and said that she'd added all the stuff into the cart and wanted me to look at it and make sure that I was in agreement with everything. And being the way that I am, I didn't even look at the items. I just went to the total. And whenever I finally caught my breath, I went back and looked at the items, and I called Allie up and I said, now tell me, of those items, what is essential? I know that if we had all the money in the world, if you could do what you wanted, you would buy all of this. But let's talk about what is necessary. Came up whenever I took my van into SD to get some repair work done. I had a list of problems that have popped up over the last several months, and we've kind of been holding off on them. And with Allie and I, we kind of entered into these discussions about what are the repairs that are necessary. And even whenever I took it into SD, I started to kind of probe him. What is essential? What are the repairs that we can hold off on? And it's not that they're not important, and they'll get tended to at some point, but maybe not today. I've had a number of conversations with the elders and staff as we made these plans to begin to gather again. The discussions about what is essential as we gather again. There's what we know about the virus is that it kind of spreads through this aerosol spray, and so we start to discuss about singing. Is that something that we do whenever we gather again, or do we omit that practice for a while because of these safety concerns? In communion, this practice that we hold to be so essential to who we are as a people, but how do we do that safely? How do we do it thoughtfully and still engage in this practice that we view as essential? Then Monday afternoon, it became evident that the repair work that was being done in our air conditioners in the auditorium, that it wasn't going to be completed by this weekend. And so we entered into a whole new set of questions about what is essential. As we have to meet in this space that isn't primarily designed for this kind of gathering. And so we have to talk about what supplies do we need? What supplies are necessary? What parts of our normal worship can we recreate in here? What parts are not essential that we need to just hold off on a little bit longer? This theme of essential shows up again and again and again. I just can't seem to get away from it. And maybe I'm not supposed to. Maybe we aren't supposed to. The last month or so, we've been engaged in a study that I've called Pause, learning to listen to God while we wait. And this sermon this morning isn't connected with that series necessarily, but throughout that series, I've been inviting you to not just get angry and frustrated with all the changes, but to pause long enough to listen to God. Throughout this time, as I've been planning about what to say to you whenever we regather, I've been drawn to a a specific text from 1 Kings chapter 8. I read it a couple of weeks ago, reading through our daily Bible reading plan. And it comes in the context of the opening of the temple, the gathering place of the people of God. See, people have long had a place where they came to worship. And even this temple, it wasn't the first place that they came to gather. But this was a place that had been in the making, in the building for 7 years. And so the anticipation was high. And Solomon knows that this is a special moment. That just like you have been eagerly anticipating coming back together again, that they have been waiting for 7 years, not just 3 months, but 7 years. Solomon knows that he has the ear of everyone in this moment. And I'm sure that he had to have asked himself, what is essential that I communicate? There are kind of two motivations that can be behind that question of what is essential. There's the motivation that produces laziness. It is just simply looking for the lowest requirement. I think about in college, whenever the first day or two of a college class, they give you a syllabus. And on that syllabus, they lay out for you the expectations of that class throughout that term. There's the required reading, the assignments that will be delivered during that class, and the point value for all of them. And in my immaturity, I would look at that and I would try and do the math in my head to determine what is essential. Now, I know the teacher is assigning all of this, but what is the least amount that I have to do in order to get the grade that I want? There's a second motivation, though, that isn't about laziness, but instead it brings about a clarity of focus. Over the last 3 months, as we have been gathering in our parking lots and in our homes online, I made the decision to at least attempt to shorten the length of my sermons from 30 to 35, maybe 40 minutes down to about 15 or so minutes. And I know that some of you have kind of gotten accustomed to that, but you can always count on an elder for that. But I've learned that I am only capable of preaching that short amount of time if I am reading. So don't get used to it. But what I learned in trying to limit myself to 15 minutes is I would spend an enormous amount of time after I'd written my sermon in editing. Cutting out points, shortening stories, the language that I would use. And what I hoped was the product of that was a message that was concise, but it was clear in its message. And it's the second motivation that I am drawing us to this morning whenever I'm asking you, what is essential? It's that concept that I have in mind whenever I think of Solomon preparing his speech for that day of the dedication of the temple. And he's asking himself, I have everyone's ear in this moment, so what is necessary that they understand? As a part of the dedication ceremony, he prays. And we have recorded for us that prayer. A few words out of that prayer stuck with me. Beginning of verse 41, Solomon prays after he's prayed about the Israelite people and their use of this building. He says, as for the foreigner who does not belong to your people Israel, but has come from a distant land because of your name, for they will hear of your great name and your mighty hand and your outstretched arm. When they come and pray toward this temple, then hear from heaven your dwelling place. Do whatever the foreigner asks, so that all the peoples on the earth may know your name and fear you, as do your own people Israel, and may know that this house I have built bears your name. I find it interesting that as Solomon is praying to God in front of his family, that he prays about this group of people that isn't gathered there. And they have no desire to gather there, at least not at this moment. But he knows that there will be a day that they will hear about God. They will hear who God is, and they will want to come to this place. Solomon understands there's something essential about this place. But it's something they will soon forget. And I have to ask this morning, have we forgotten? I know that it's great to be together again. I know that it's great to gather and to see people's faces, to see the smiles or to see the eyes light up. I know that it's great to hear other people sing other than yourself and maybe the other people in your car or in your house. But don't be fooled into thinking that that's the only reason that we gather. Because for the church to be its most influential, we need to know what is essential. We need to know what is necessary. I know that at some point in the last couple of weeks, as our world continues to devolve into craziness, that there has been some moment where you have thought to yourself that our world needs just a little more of God. Our world needs a little more of Jesus. Our world needs a little more of something. Ephesians 3 verse 10 says that it is through the church that God has chosen to reveal His manifold wisdom. It sounds like foolishness, but God has chosen to use the church to reveal the goodness of His kingdom. And for us as a church to live up to our potential, it's essential that this is a place not only for us, but for those who don't gather. Jesus, years later, would walk into the temple, and He would see that they have forgotten. Walking into the temple in Mark chapter 11, the temple court, He began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And as He taught them, He said, "Is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers." Jesus was not outraged that they were selling animals. It was a necessary thing for them to engage in the sacrifices of the Jewish worship. He wasn't necessarily upset that they were inside the temple. What He was upset about is that they were in the temple courts. It was the gathering place of the foreigners, of the outsiders. Their selling of goods was preventing the prayer of Solomon from coming true. And Jesus tells them that they're coming thinking that they're worshiping God, but in reality, they're only worshiping themselves. It reminds me of the mother that made some pancakes for her 2 sons. And they began to argue over who got the first pancake. And seeing this as a teaching moment, she told them that if Jesus were here, that He would say to his brother, "You have the first pancake." Very quickly, the oldest turned to the younger and said, "Today, you be Jesus." Because there are a number of people, there are many people who claim the name of Jesus, but are simply unwilling to follow Him. I can't help but wonder if during this time God is offering the invitation to us to ask the question, what is essential? I wonder if in our pleas of regathering that we have lost sight of what's necessary. That we long to return to what is normal. But don't forget that we are a church that cannot afford to return to normal. Because normal for us over the last several years has been a declining attendance. And more importantly than just a declining attendance is that we have fewer people that are coming to faith in Jesus through the life and ministry of this church. And that is the stated mission of our church. The first half of our mission statement is that we are to bring people to Jesus. And as we do that, then we discover how to be more like Jesus. And we may say those words, but are we being faithful to our mission? To the mission of Jesus? The good news is that we have the vantage point of learning from others who have forgotten what is essential. Thinking of the Corinthian church, a church that was filled with problems and conflicts. Throughout this letter, Paul addresses those conflicts. He provides the answers that they are seeking and tries to bring about the unity that they need in this church. And then, in the last couple of chapters, he provides the formula for how he has come to those answers. He's showing his work here in chapter 15. He says, "Now, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you of the gospel I preached to you, which you have received and on which you have taken your stand." See, this isn't new information that he's giving to them. They don't need him to come in and solve their problems. He says, "By this gospel you are saved, if you hold firmly to the word I preached to you. Otherwise, you have believed in vain. For what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that He was buried, that He was raised on the third day, according to the Scriptures." Whenever Paul says that he's passing on to them what is of first importance, our ears should perk up. We should come to attention because he's telling us what is essential. That what is essential for the church is Christ is central to the gospel. And Paul argues that changes everything in the present. That everything right now is changed because Jesus died on the cross according to the Scriptures for our sins. That He raised on the third day according to the Scriptures. It changes everything. It changed everything for the group that gathered in Acts chapter 2 to listen to Peter preach. Whenever they were confronted with the truth of Jesus Christ, they were pricked at the heart. And they were baptized. They were added to the family of God. Not one of them chose their family, but they were added to the family. And that unity that the Corinthian church is struggling with, what they need to remember is they didn't choose their family. They chose Christ. And whenever you choose Christ, you are added to the family. It continued to change everything for people like the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts chapter 8, who was heading back home after having been to Jerusalem and perhaps The indication is that he traveled there to worship at the temple. And it's likely, if he had done that, that he was rejected. He was turned away because of the fact that he was a foreigner, because he was a eunuch. And Philip comes up to him and begins with Isaiah, because that just happens to be what the eunuch is reading at the time, about the lamb that is being led to the slaughter. And whenever Philip explains to him that it is Jesus that is being spoken about, that eunuch is baptized into Christ, and he is added to the family. It changes everything about the present. And Paul is going to point the Corinthian church about the changing everything in the future. The last verse of chapter 15 leaves us with this hope that because of Christ, let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. A common talking point recently has been, are we now living in the last days? Because of all that we see taking place all around us, we begin to wonder, are these the last days? One author writing about this suggested that he thought so, and in fact his hope was that we are. I actually kind of hope that we're not. Now I look forward to that day when their death has been put to rest. I look forward to the day when there is no more COVID-19. I look forward to the day when there are no more murders, there are no more riots. I look forward to the day when we are experiencing life as God intended it. But I also read in 2 Peter 3 verse 9 that the reason that God is holding off, the reason that God is waiting, is because He's not wanting anyone to perish. And I know that there are so many in our world that they do not understand what is essential. That they are living in this world without hope because they're living without Jesus. And I know that there may be someone even in this room this morning that you have been sidetracked. Not by things that are evil or wickedness necessarily, but just have lost focus on what is necessary, what is essential. And there will be that. But for now, we live in the day where we reflect on what God has done in us so that the world will know. Dusty's going to lead us in that song right now. What the Lord has done in me. Maybe the Lord is doing something in you. If you'd like to respond to the message, now is the time to do that. If you'd like to be baptized into Christ for the forgiveness of your sins, we can do that this morning. If you'd like someone to pray for you, you can come as we stand and sing together.